Hello and welcome to Switched On, where today we're taking a look at the issue of cyber security. Joining me is Dr. Michael Snowden. Thank you very much, Michael. One of the most high-profile examples of a cyber attack is the alleged Russian cyber attack that happened 2 years ago during the American presidential election. Can you start by explaining what exactly happened?
We've got a great benefit because the FBI has filed charges and got a grand jury indictment against 12 Russian military intelligence officers who are alleged to have broken into the Democratic National Convention, the Democratic Party resources, and the president of the National Democratic Party, all of which was intended to humiliate or create meddling within the presidential election in 2016, Hillary Clinton versus Trump. And that document, 29 pages, gives us a nuts and bolts detail of how they did it. And so we might imagine that the Russian military have very, very sophisticated techniques to doing this. It turns out they're not. And what makes this really interesting for our own protection against cyber attack is that they use plain, everyday techniques.
Explain to me a bit more about that, because as you suggest, we would expect that they had incredibly sophisticated hacking techniques, but in fact, no.
Absolutely common tools. And the main one they use is called spear phishing, which is to say that you send something that looks as if it's genuine, but it's not. In this particular case, they used a Google Gmail account and said, "You're being compromised, please reset your password." The user re-entered the password and they were in. Once they were in, they were able to understand how the networks worked. They planted more malware, which is the idea of putting some software in their network that tells them something. In this case, it was key logging. And so they're able to track every keystroke that a user would make, as well as taking screenshots of what that user would see. So once you're collecting that information, and this is over 300 individuals across 3 different networks, they're able to penetrate all sorts of parts of that network.
This is obviously a big global example of a cyber attack. But are we vulnerable to something similar here in New Zealand?
Absolutely. At a political level, you might think, why would anyone be interested in New Zealand? But I think that would be naive. I think we've just got to expect that state actors will always meddle in some way in democratic elections. But at a business level, we are all vulnerable, and it happens all the time, every hour. Every business network has been attacked all of the time.
And do you need to be a politician or a big business leader to be targeted for an attack like this?
Not at all. It goes right across the board. I should have mentioned spear phishing is more about a concentrated focus on a particular organization. In this case, they were focused on 300 people. Phishing just generally goes out all over the internet. And if you're unlucky and you can see how vulnerable people are to all the Nigerian princes who have trouble getting their cash out of their account and they need your help. And so we're just vulnerable as humans that emotionally we respond to certain things, or sometimes we're completely unaware through a lack of training.
So how seriously should we all be taking our own cybersecurity, and what measures should we be taking to protect ourselves?
Well, it's a very, very important part. It could paralyze a business, obviously, if you lose customer lists, if you lose key product information, if you're just simply frozen as a business and unable to interact, you lose your accounts receivable. How do you collect your funds unless you've got good backup? So it really begins by good methodology. And I think the first point is that business leaders have to be aware. They have to be sufficiently aware of what's going on to understand that certain requirements are needed. In other words, training the staff. There are a host of other things. I mean, you can have antivirus, and if you don't have antivirus, that's a problem, but it's not effective. You can't rely on that 100%. It simply isn't 100% effective. I think education is the main thing, and if at the end of it, you could have cyber insurance. Now, cyber insurance is like having an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It's too late, but at least you've got some financial support to help you get back on your feet. So there are a number of different ways in which you can protect, but you've got to expect that it will get worse and harder to detect over time.
And so it's really not enough to be saying to yourself, I'm a small business at the bottom of the world in New Zealand, it's not going to happen to me.
Well, we know it does happen. And we can see a whole trail of ransomware attacks in the last couple of years. So it happens at businesses of all sizes. And that's just a fact of life today, unfortunately. The biggest learnings, I think, are that we're all vulnerable, and it's very little we can do about it, frankly. They're always going to be ahead of us. It's very difficult to catch up. And as I said, it's artificial intelligence versus artificial intelligence now. That's the only way these things can really provide a good defence.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.